12 minutes after 11 o'clock, continuing to track the latest with Helene, looking at the tide gauges here across the Bay Area. It's really all about just trying to figure out what's going to happen later tonight. We've seen a lot of minor flooding. I mean, I know a lot of the flooding that you're seeing from Larissa, from Heather, from Casey and Clearwater earlier. We've seen this before. You're like, all right, that's nothing. And that's fine. I agree. Nothing that we've seen so far has been particularly unusual for the Bay Area in past storms. The issue is, if what's happening now is in line with what's been forecast, and you look ahead into the forecast for tonight when the real surge arrives, are those forecasts going to verify? Because if they do, then those 5 to 8 foot numbers from the Hurricane Center suddenly seem pretty reasonable. Here is the gauge over at Old Port Tampa Bay. The tide is supposed to be going down. It is not. It continues to rise. It just amazes me when I see this. The tidal forces, I mean, the moon is pulling the water back. This storm is pushing it in. It don't care. It's still pushing that water into McKay Bay. The observed level, it's kind of hard to get this perfectly aligned with where this should be. I'm trying to get the latest reading. The predicted level earlier was supposed to be at a level of 0.06, so about 0. The level was 2.4. 2.4 feet above where it should have been. It's almost at minor flooding there in McKay Bay. Not quite there, but it's pretty close. I only have 5 of these for the Bay Area. A lot of you asking me, what about Newport Richey? There's not one in every town. I don't have data. And the only one I have an actual forecast for is this one, Port Manatee. This is over at the Manatee River. And the light blue color is the forecast. The red is what it's actually measuring. Live look, there's an instrument there. It knows exactly where the water is, and every few minutes it's saying, okay, the water's here. Now it's here. Now it's there. Well, the forecast has been following it pretty well. It's forecasted this rise. The bay leveled off for a while there, the water level. It is starting to drop here. That's good news. But that's what it was forecast to do, because we're heading toward a low tide sometime early in the afternoon. Looks like that low tide is about 4:30 this afternoon at Port Manatee. The next high tide, now the next high tide is not as high as the one we just had, is around midnight or 1 a.m. The typical level is about 0. It's forecast to be at 6 feet. And if it's been forecast well so far, there's no reason to believe that this next forecast for potentially moderate to major flooding around midnight at Port Manatee, it's reasonable to believe that that could happen, that this forecast is on target. So we'll be watching it very carefully. The other thing you folks have been asking for me on Facebook is these inundation maps. Okay, so this is available on the National Hurricane Center website. Literally google.com, type in National Hurricane Center. It will take you to this website. Make sure it ends in .gov. That's how you know you're at the legitimate National Hurricane Center, not some Facebook group or whatever. It should look like this. You find the Helene section at the bottom, and you click on the map that says Storm Surge Inundation. This is a computer model. Inundation means covered by water. This takes all the math out of the picture. You don't have to know what the tide is, what the surge is, get out a piece of paper and try to figure out what the actual water level will be on your property. This actually does that for you, and it tells you how much water is there going to be above the ground at any location. This is worst case scenario, so I'm not necessarily saying this is going to happen, but if we do max things out, the areas in yellow could have 3 feet of water on them. The areas in orange, sporadic, but they're there, 6 feet. And in red, along the beaches, that's 9 feet of water. That means if you're to be standing at the edge of the Gulf of Mexico on a typical day during peak surge, the water would be 9 feet above you at that point, or above your feet at that point, if we do maximize the surge. Obviously, the farther north you go, and this does show neighborhoods in some capacity, you see there's a lot more areas in red, Hernando and Citrus County. It does not, however, go down to street or neighborhood level, nor is this accurate within street level. You know, a lot of you asking, giving me a street or a zip code. Hey, what about? It's not that accurate. I'm sorry to say. We're not there yet to be able to model these. It's amazing that they're able to produce these maps as detailed as they are. And you can actually look at this for the entire coast. They run this model in areas where hurricanes are impacting, and they rerun it with every update. So they're going to rerun this with the 11 a.m. new track, new intensity, put all that in there to figure out what's going on. All right, let's go back to the maps and show you what's going on with the storm here. The 11 a.m. just came in. It's trying. There is some dry air that's caught up in this thing, and I think it is slowing its intensification down just a bit. You see these oranges down on the south side. They were on the west side earlier. This eye is trying to become more well-defined. It does have an eye. It's a ragged eye. It's not a well-formed one, but despite all that, it continues to see winds increasing, forward motion is increasing. The pressure hasn't dropped since the last update. That's good news. The last pressure drop was measured at 8 a.m. It's held steady through the 11 o'clock update. That's certainly good news. The track, a little nudge east. I'm not want to read too much into that. I mean, if we see two more of these, certainly that would be great news. Unfortunately, there's only one more track update from the Hurricane Center before landfall likely, and that's the 5 p.m. And then the landfall should happen before the 11 p.m. update comes in. So we'll be watching this carefully, but we do want it to nudge a little east into Taylor and Madison County just so that we can keep Tallahassee's large population center out of the way of the strongest winds. And that's where a lot of the model data is still indicating. This really hasn't changed. It's Jefferson over towards maybe Taylor counties. That's probably more likely. This arrow was pointing to the 5 a.m. position of the National Hurricane Center track. It was here. The current one is the red line here. So it's shifted 10 miles, maybe 15. Not a ton, but enough. Does that change anything for us, by the way? No, it makes no difference. That 15 miles, you're not going to feel any kind of change here. The impacts on the Florida Peninsula are more broad. They don't change from a 5 or 10 mile wobble. The reason why Tallahassee's are so important is because the strongest hurricane winds may only be 10 or 15 miles wide max, maybe 5 miles at the most. So by moving them 20 miles to the east, you're suddenly taking those strong, whether it be Category 3 or Category 4 winds at that point, and you're literally moving them out of the city. That small hop can make a big difference. You're still going to get 100-mile-an-hour winds in Tallahassee maybe, but not 125 or 130. Better. It's better. It's still not an ideal situation, I agree, but that would reduce the amount of damage that you would see for sure. Tropical storm warnings for most of us, and that's what most of us will see. Tropical storm conditions, winds below 74 miles per hour. There's those surge numbers. I already showed you the maps. Those have not changed as of the 11 o'clock update. We're all in tropical storm force winds. Now, this is new from the Hurricane Center, so this is interesting. In the 5 a.m., the orange, the strong tropical storm force winds were well offshore. Now it looks like they're just skirting the Pinellas County coast. So the Hurricane Center thinks, all right, somebody here, maybe northern Pinellas County, the part of the county that kind of sticks out into the Gulf, you may get into a period where the winds are briefly sustained 58, 59, 60 miles per hour. So it is in that time, this is 6 p.m., that you then would be maybe potentially concerned about a wind gust to hurricane force. Then as we go through the rest of the evening, those winds kind of hug the Citrus, Hernando, Pasco County coast. So you could get some 60-mile-an-hour sustained winds and gusts over 70. Interestingly enough, that is what our in-house computer model was forecasting all day yesterday. And it looked like didn't make any sense. But now it seems like maybe we are actually trending towards that direction. It did well with Francine over in Louisiana earlier in the month. So this could be onto something. Winds are out of the south right now. These are the current winds measured. So these are no longer model winds. This is what's being reported. It's breezy. I'd call this a breezy to windy day. St. Pete 30. That wind report in St. Pete is always going to be a little bit more dramatic than everybody else because it's measured at Whitted Field. It's a flat area. There are no obstructions, and it's on the water. So it's measuring the maximum wind you could possibly get at that time in St. Pete. If you live away from the water, your winds are lighter than that. 40-mile-an-hour gust in Northport, 41 Sarasota, 48 in Bradenton. Strong. That's tropical storm. but it's nothing that is dangerous or severe. Speaking of which, there's no rain out there now. As you saw from Heather, it's a beautiful sunny day. You can get out there, enjoy the wind, stay out of the water. Please stay out of the water. If your neighborhood is flooded, if your street is flooded, do not walk in that water. It is full of debris, of course, all kinds of trash, sewage in most cases as well. It's coming up out of the street. You heard Larissa say that. It's coming from the ground. Well, guess what else is coming with it? Everything else that ran off that's been sitting in those sewers. So do not walk in that water. It is probably high in bacteria in terms of a count. If you do come in contact with it, make sure you clean yourself off and wash any clothes, disinfect anything that touches that water. Some showers offshore right now. These are kind of skirting the beaches, but even in terms of severe weather, these are not going to produce tornadoes. These are too small. So we are under a tornado watch. That's the red box here until 8 o'clock this evening. And it actually goes from about Marion County. Actually, look, they extended it up into South Georgia. So now all of Florida from Miami, South Florida into South Georgia up to Brunswick about is in a tornado watch because at any time thunderstorms could develop here. With the heating of the afternoon, we could get them. There's the eye. It does show up better on radar than on satellite picture. And it continues north-northeast. It goes north. The way this is going to work, it's going to go north 4 steps and then take 1 step to the east. Take 4 steps north and another step to the east. That's how it's going to get a little bit farther to the east, a little bit closer to the peninsula, and hopefully east of downtown Tallahassee and up towards Taylor and Madison counties. Thunderstorm chances for us do increase this afternoon and evening as this thing rolls by. Futurecast, love this model. This is the same one that we talked about, tracking the center of the storm. This one's modeling right now the rain bands. It's not really showing much until later this afternoon. So we could go through the next several hours with very little rain, just some gusty winds and periods of sun. The strong winds are here. This solid area of rain that starts approaching the coast late this afternoon and evening. It's in these rain bands that you get these strong wind gusts, 60, 65, maybe 70 miles an hour, isolated tornado warnings. Now, if you live east of 75, forget about 70-mile-an-hour winds. Not going to happen. Lakeland, I mean, you could gust to maybe 60, but the majority of the wind gusts in Polk, Hardy, DeSoto, and Highlands counties are going to be 40 to maybe 50 miles an hour, and occasional gusts to 55. So tree branches, isolated power outages out here, closer to the coast, larger branches, maybe some trees toppled, broken, more widespread power outages. This is later in the evening. This is now coming up on the 10 o'clock hour. Still looking at that scattered rain, that water getting pushed into the bay. But things start to improve after 9 or 10. The wind starts slacking off as the center quickly accelerates into South Georgia. That's going to cause all kinds of issues for Atlanta, by the way. Tomorrow, if you're traveling that way, Charlotte, Atlanta, big airport hubs, they're going to be impacted severely by the rain and wind from this. Not a damaging wind, but just the rain and the gusty winds. So even though our airports will reopen tomorrow, I expect a lot of flight issues. Nashville, big Southwest hub, they're going to be issues, and the airlines may have trouble kind of getting back to normal until the weekend. I don't think they're going to get back to normal tomorrow because their planes will be impacted by the weather at some of their largest hubs. So this is that in-house computer model, and you see it's been doing really well with the winds. These are gusts, not sustained, and these are about what the current gusts are now. It said that 11:30 in the morning, we're going to see wind gusts in the upper 30s and the low to mid 40s. That's what I just showed you. That's what we're just seeing right now. As we go into 2 o'clock in the afternoon, they basically stay the same. So you're still good to get out of the way of the water. You're still good to maybe take care of a couple of other things outside. Maybe you want to go ahead and pull that grill in if you haven't already. Maybe move a couple of smaller things, flower pots, that kind of deal. Move them inside. Still got the chance. By 4 o'clock, most of us are still okay, though between 4 and 6, look at these numbers, they increase substantially. So the ramp up is really towards 6 o'clock this evening. And you see these Category 1 winds. It's interesting because the model was showing this before the Hurricane Center issued their update, and it seems like it's ahead of them by just a couple of hours. It was showing this in the 9 and 10 o'clock hour. The Cat 1 winds, maybe the tropical storm winds, just skirting the Pinellas County coast. So that's where you could see that wind gust 67, 68, 69 miles an hour, maybe 70. This is 7 o'clock. 7:30, still gusting into the 60s. There's 8 o'clock, still seeing gusts, 50s for most, 60s along the coast. 8:30, maybe 9 o'clock, maybe a stronger gust up towards Crystal River, Brooksville. You're closer to the center, but the center, there's the eye, nowhere near us. Safely away. The strong, really nasty winds in this orange never get close to us. They go up towards the Big Bend, and that's where the winds go. The water is going to be a concern through that high tide at midnight. The winds will be dying down by midnight, but they're still going to be out of the south and west, still pushing that water in addition to the actual tidal forces themselves.